Out on this beautiful Saturday. I hate that we're keeping you all inside, but I think we have a great panel ready for you today. So I'm Lindsay Roberts, the Vice Chair of our ACES student group here at DU, and I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists. First, though, I'd like to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of our ACES officers who helped contribute today. We have Chris Coughlin, our Chair of the ACES student group. Josh Davis, our Secretary, and also Tech Help. Not here with us today are Rebecca Bolger, Julia Havlick, and Jules Robinson, but we appreciate the help that they gave us for this event as well. Also, I'd like to announce our next Tech Bites event is going to be April 3rd. We're going to have Joseph Lebrecq speaking to us about, is it Adobe Flash?
It's not Adobe Flash, it is, I don't remember the exact, it's a new
Apache Flex, that's what it is. Okay, and that's going to be 6:30 to 7 p.m. We'll also stream that at our URL as usual. So some brief bios about today's panelists. We have Julie Bain. Julie is the School Library Media Specialist and Building Technology Coordinator at Air Academy High School and has been for the last 3 years. She received her BA in Information Systems and Technology and her MSIS from the University of Albany at the State University of New York. We have Chris Evge. He's the Librarian Project Manager and Web Developer at Jefferson County Public Libraries with 12 years of experience. He has an MSLIS from the iSchool at Syracuse University, and his areas of professional focus include content strategy, organizational leadership, and Drupal. He's a recipient of the iSchool's Leadership for the Future Award and was a member of the Cal Leadership Institute class of 2011. We have Tabby Farney, the Web Services Librarian at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. Tabby earned an MS in Library and Information Science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in 2007. And was named a 2011 ALA Emerging Leader. She recently co-authored the book Web Analytics Strategies for Information Professionals, a LIDA Guide, and we will be presenting follow-up web analytics research at the ACRL Conference 2013 this April. We have Deborah Hamill, also with Jefferson County Public Library. Deborah is the web systems developer and has worked for over 14 years at public libraries in various positions, from the reference desk to web development, all without an MLIS, so she brings a unique perspective to us. She's been working in the library web development department for the past decade and has seen many changes in the work and skills needed to meet the ever-changing needs and expectations of our patrons and leadership. Her most recent project is working on a redesign of the public website at JCPL, which was built on open source Drupal software. Also, we have Vivian Hutton here today. Vivian graduated from this MLIS program in June of 2012, so we're very excited to have her with us. Vivian was the vice chair of ACES last year, and she is currently the web services librarian at the Health Sciences Library at the University of Colorado's Anschutz Medical Campus. Finally, we have Sheila Yee. Sheila is the library digital infrastructure and technology coordinator here at the University of Denver. Previously, Sheila worked as the web services librarian for the University of Colorado Health Sciences Library at the Anschutz Medical Campus, the job Vivian now holds. So some interesting perspectives there. Sheila received her MLS in Library and Information Science from the University of Maryland and her MSc in Industrial and Human Factors Engineering from Wright State University. She has expertise developing research databases, digital image collections, electronic books, and archival materials repositories, and mobile websites for higher education institutions. In her spare time, Sheila is pursuing a PhD in computer science and information systems at the University of Colorado at Denver. So very excited to have all of these folks with us today. Basically how the panel will work, we have some questions all prepared, but please ask questions whenever you're ready. If you have something that's stirring, please go ahead. And Josh, if you contribute, if there are questions from any of our online viewers, please let us know about that too. Great. So the first question I'll throw out to you all is, what skills helped you get your current job? And maybe if we could start with you, Deborah, and kind of work our way this way.
Okay. My first job was at Vail Public Library, and this was 14 years ago. And I didn't have a library degree, but luckily I got a position there, and I learned pretty much everything across the board for library service. And at that time, a website was a new thing, and databases were new things, and I built a website there, and I think the skills that I learned about libraries and sort of that new edge that was 14 years ago at New Edge enabled me to get a position at Jefferson County Public Library that was a new position as a web technician, which I would think of as a content manager for a website now. But in that form, you needed to learn how to code, HTML, and that was sort of the skill set that I got building a website at a small library with the context of databases, with the context of a lot of resources and how to present them. And that was the beginning of HTML and CSS, and that was the skill set I think that got me the job that was a unique job 10 years ago at Jefferson County. And now it's snowballed from there. Coding, and I suppose I would say get your MLS now because later you'll never have a reason. And it's important because it still is the most, I guess it's really referential when people want to hire in libraries. They want you to have a master in library. Even though I've worked for 14 years in a library without it, it would be hard for me to move without those credentials. And so I would encourage you to, stay with your program and go to the different organizations like ACES and LEDA and join those organizations, participate in them. Like I work with Chris Edgy, and he has a lot of different presences that he participates in. It's really hard for him. He splits his time, but it means for him those opportunities to connect with people. And as someone who spent 14 years maybe not doing enough of that, I would say to anyone in the program to do that, because your skills, even if you learn and learn and learn, if you don't follow up with all the other parts, then it won't matter, even if you can code, because you won't have those connections. So my skills are probably coding at this point, from HTML to now Drupal, which is PHP, and that's new to me now. So I'm kind of one of those people that has to say, what's the thing I need to do the next level? And that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I have to say the skills that got me to my current job would probably be a mixture of coding, because I'm a code monkey at heart, but I'm also a people person. And the position that I am currently in is actually a blended position where I am the web services librarian, but I also am expected to do reference and instruction. So I kind of do everything. And this is actually kind of directly what I was doing in graduate school. I had an opportunity to be a graduate assistant at the Education and Social Science Library at the University of Illinois. And I was their web services and reference graduate assistant. So they probably looked at me for this job and they're just like, well, she's already been doing this, so let's keep her doing it. And I have to say, if you have a chance when you look for jobs, do not just be a code monkey all your life. Try to work with users, because you're going to find the best usability testing is working at the reference desk and watching them fail in front of you, because it's just one of those eye-opening experiences. So I think being able to take that opportunity and that skill set with me is really kind of what got me my current job.
I would say probably what I can add to this is project management skills. It's definitely one of the reasons I have the position I'm in now, which I've had for 2 years. Going into the particular library system that I work at, Jefferson County Public Library, which is west of Denver here, they were just about to embark on a large project to go from a static web presence to a content management system-driven website. So they definitely needed someone to organize that effort. And really, it's turned into a reimagining of what library service means on the web, and so we're pretty happy with the way things have really turned out. But I guess that would be the one skill that hasn't been mentioned yet that really landed me in the job that I'm in now.
I would have to say 2 things. One, a lot of people that I went to school with, school librarians, their bachelors are in English or history, and coming with a really techie bachelor's definitely helped me, because in schools they're really trying to kind of consolidate positions and crunch money wherever they can. So I took on the building technology position as well as the library position. So that definitely helped, because I run both of those, and then I can kind of collaborate those 2 things together, which really helps a lot. The second thing is waiting tables all the way through, because it taught me multitasking and dealing with people, because I think that definitely helps throughout my day. I get pulled in 100 different directions, so being able to manage all those things at once was definitely worth it.
So, being my position for a whole 2 months now, I would recommend that definitely tech skills, and specifically coding and programming skills, which I lack. I know HTML a little bit, and I definitely need to work on my own programming skills. But I would say that in addition to that, I would agree with Chris, the project management skills are critical because in your position, you're not just going to be working in front of the computer. You're going to be working with the staff members, trying to find out from them what their needs are. And trying to lead groups, whether it's a web working group or being part of another committee. And so the project management skills, and I know that the project management class here at DU's MLIS program is mandatory. Highly recommend that you, when you're taking that class, to take it from the perspective of I'm actually going to use these skills later in the position. And the networking skills are really important. I think that now is the time for you to be building relationships with people that you're volunteering with, meeting at events like this, events at conferences, that you need to build those relationships starting now while you're a student.
As you know, I'm not a web services librarian at my current position. So in my current position as a coordinator for the, used to be Penrose Library, now we're called the Main Libraries, University of Denver Main Libraries. So my current position, I will manage the library systems and the library support staff. I also coordinate projects with schools, other schools on the university campus. So among the university different departments, and I have strategic and I have budgetary and managerial responsibilities. So I also have a bachelor's degree in computer science. So I have worked as a librarian as well as assistant developers in my past. So the skills that helped me get this job include systems lifecycle development, web development, databases, and the managerial skills, supervisory skills, and cataloging and metadata standards, understanding, and library operations, and also my multidisciplinary degrees. I believe that helped me. And a current study in the computer science and management of information systems also helped me be able to do my job well. Thank you.
So our next question is, how closely do you work with your campus or IT staff? And how does your work fit in with the larger library or IT department?
Is that me? Well, let's see. We work at a public library that has a pretty traditional organizational chart. IT and facilities is a department separated a little bit by design to manage the infrastructure, if you can imagine a lot of the technological infrastructure, the broadband, the machines that people are using. So they manage that every day, and they man a help desk for any question that's going to come in if something's down for our public services staff. And for us in web, which is the department that I work in, there's actually a little bit of a distance between, and I would say that is an unhappiness for me, is that there's a little bit of a distance between how our projects integrate with the decision making and all of the things that are happening with our IT department. So I would say in my current position, in its current state, I have a challenge that I'd like to overcome working with my IT department, because I think there's a lot of common interests and common goals that sometimes get misinterpreted or misunderstood, or they're not collaborative. All the project management that could bring something like that together sometimes doesn't happen for us, I think. But so I would say I'm not really close with that. The one thing that's critical, and it always comes up in the timing when something's going to affect something or something doesn't work, our ILS system, the cataloging system, which a lot of our patrons don't discriminate between our website and our catalog, but the integration of that and those critical decisions and that functionality that doesn't quite make the seamless experience for our patrons, if we could come through this challenge and get those two to have common goals, I think it would transform the experience. And I know Tabitha, you talk a lot about the other side, the usability of something. So I would say right now, there's a little bit too much distance. And if there's a reason for you to code, it would be so you can have an understanding and talk across those different departmental lines. So if you want a reason to experiment with code, but you don't want to become any programmer, you don't even want to work with code, just to understand it so you can form those conversations or understand back and forth what you need for whatever you're trying to accomplish in your task across the department. That would be a reason to at least understand coding. But for us at IT, it's kind of a touch and go. But we work on it one project at a time, and you build relationships too. I would say the people skills are something that is always going to help you no matter what, and communication. So, I'm going to be the first on all these questions. You might be.
You might wanna start looking
I'm a little off the cuff, so it would be interesting if I said two.
So I work at a smaller university. We have 9 librarians, and honestly, we have 1 web server in our library, and it's solely dedicated to the ILS, which means we have got to be the best friends with Campus IT because they're the ones that house all of our projects. And everyone, when I first came in, it actually was a very nasty relationship between the library and IT. It was actually very toxic. But once I actually successfully navigated, you're going to love this, the library's website from front page into static HTML into a Dreamweaver site, all of a sudden, you know, IT started paying attention because we were the first department to be able to do that on our own on campus without asking for their resources. So all of a sudden, they started paying attention. After I've been in my current position for 6 years now the campus IT and web services, they rely on the library as one of their test cases. We just moved into a new content management system, and out of all of the departments on campus, the library and the College of Business were the only ones to get their own sandboxes and their own test beds. So we actually have our own test server now on campus. And it took a while, but honestly, it was about building relationships, showing them that we are competent, we know what we're doing, and we can help. So they're understaffed all the time. So once they saw that we can help lighten the load, they're totally down for letting us do what we needed to get done. So build those relationships early on.
So Deborah and I work at the same library in the same department. So she mentioned that, yeah, probably we most closely work with IT around issues involving the ILS and the web OPAC and the discovery layer, my account functionality, all that stuff, and the user interfaces that and the seams between the content management system driven website and the ILS, and making that systems integration piece is very important. So we keep a close eye on that, and we work with our systems administrator and IT on a weekly basis. The other things that we rely on IT for, well, I guess it's worth saying that we have negotiated with our IT department to move hosting of our new website, which goes live on Wednesday, in the cloud.
It's a clap.
It's out in the cloud. It's on Amazon AWS servers in Oregon. And the reason being is really I insisted on having an enterprise level environment for us to work in. This means an environment that maintains 99.9% uptime. It is never down. And the fact of the matter is, in my calculations, what we needed was we needed to run on the Linux operating system. And our IT department is a Windows shop. So I argued successfully, since we didn't have a Linux sysadmin on staff, that we really needed to move out into the cloud and consult for those services, for that systems infrastructure knowledge and management. So that's one reason why we don't, even less so, that we in the future we won't be dealing with our IT with server issues, our IT staff.
I live in Denver. When you say our IT, is that within the library system?
Yes.
Or is it the city? Or is
The county.
county?
No, it's within the library system. So it's actually our IT offices are in the Library Service Center in Wheat Ridge. So, and the other thing that we rely on our IT department for is our DNS server. So they control the domain name. In our case, it's jeffcolibrary.org. And right now our beta site is running at new.jeffcolibrary.org. So we're about to launch that, and that's a switching in our domain name table. our DNS table. So that obviously that's IT's purview too. So we do work with them on things like that too. But yeah, we're definitely we're lucky in that we could move out to the cloud, and not everyone is, can make that argument effectively, and for various different reasons. And classically, and I'm sure you all know this, IT departments and web departments, depending how your organization is structured, can be very tenuous.
Yes.
Which is diplomatic.
Trying to be.
And also, the other thing that's unusual about our web services department is we're in public services.
Right.
I've been making library websites for about 12 years and worked in IT departments for 10 of them, and 2 of them in anything other than an IT department. But it's an interesting orientation. Maybe I'll get to talk about a little bit more about that orientation and what that does to our approach to library service of the web.
Or the user. Yeah, who's using your stuff.
Well, I am the IT department, so I say, hey, Julie, do you think that's a good idea? And I'm like, yeah, it's an awesome idea. You're so smart and charming. Not really. I have 3 people that work in my building that are technically our IT staff. So they're not certified teachers. They come in to do a lot of the, like, kind of hardware and like installations and things like that. My job is more about using technology in terms of the curriculum. So a science teacher will come to me and say, hey, I've really been wanting to amp up this lesson. I've been doing it the same way for 10 years. How can we kind of make this more exciting, include some technology and things like that? So I do get calls a lot that will say, oh, you know, my projector's not working and I have to say turn it off and turn it back on. Like that's the first thing. But most of the time, those 3 people in the building will get those calls. But I would die without them. So when I talk about how jobs have been kind of consolidated and I've had to take on a bigger role, they are what keeps me floating above water. So they are constantly out. They're great people, I guess. They interact really well with people, super helpful to all the teachers and the students in the building. So they can kind of be out fielding those kind of minor turn it off, turn it back on things when I can kind of be working on more of a big picture type approach. So they keep me above water, and I thank them every day with lots of Starbucks that they're around. So we work really closely.
The IT department of the Health Sciences Library is located in our building on the 2nd floor. There are 6 of us in the IT department. My supervisor, Jeff Kunzman, is the head of IT. And we have the systems developer and the systems developer who manage all the servers. And then we have an email coordinator who interfaces with the students, anything that has to do with email, for both campuses at Anschutz Medical Campus and at UCD. And also we have, I work under Jeff, and then I supervise the web developer. So the 6 of us, 5 of us are in one space, and the student coordinator is on the 1st floor because she interfaces with the students. So being that we're so close to each other, being in the same space, we're easily able to collaborate and communicate really well. Being part of a large university, we work a lot with the campus level IT departments, and that's both at UCD and at Anschutz. And that means going to various meetings and also attending different courses, because although our site is on Drupal, the campus site is on SharePoint. So the web developer and I attend the SharePoint classes because they're going to be rolling out an intranet based on SharePoint 2013, and we want to be knowledgeable about SharePoint by the time it rolls out. So it's being able to work closely together is a real benefit, being in the same space. So
This is an interesting question to me. So my department is the library IT. And even though it's a satellite of the campus IT, but we work very close with campus IT. Okay, so describe my library. for the university libraries, it's a big operation. We take care of all the libraries' integrated library system, ILS. And we also take care of libraries' different various applications, digital repository and digital asset management. This all includes the whole entire application. That could be vendor-based, it could be open source. And we also take care of the user terminals, library staff, and library. Certain computers on the first floor, if you go into the new library, is for research, and for the classroom, that's what we will take care of them. And we also take care of the whole audiovisual technology within the new building and the classroom support on campus. So my library, the library information technology department encompasses a lot of different units and tasks. But we do work very closely with the campus IT because they would take care of our server, they would take care of our authentication, and they would take care of certain printer configuration or zero client image configuration. So we work closely with them. And my goal is to not to work separately with them, but we need to leverage their expertise. And we need to work with them to ensure that there's no duplication of services and there's no gap. And the new emerging need to work with them is data management. As you know, there's a data management needs on campus. The researchers want to put their data on a shared drive, but they will also want to have learn how to manage their data. So we're working with the campus IT how to set up data management infrastructure for the researcher. And in the meantime, we will help the researcher how to manage their data.
Actually, I have a question from one of our online participants, Amanda Reed. Wanted to know, she's wondering about learning coding. What language do the panelists recommend specifically? She's an MLIS student with no background, and this is a great question, actually. I think this as well.
Who wants to start?
Yeah. Well, I would say pick one. And for me, right now, the opportunity out of necessity, I'm working on a Drupal site. So PHP is
We'll
the
talk about the classes of code first. Like
class.
HTML is not PHP. What's the difference?
Right. So okay. So there are different kinds of code, right? And so I think my initial background would be to say a foundation in HTML and CSS, maybe a little JavaScript or something. The scripting languages, JavaScript, I would say would be something to learn a little bit of. But if you're really wanting to code, and if you want to, for me, what I feel like is really exciting is if you use a lot of systems and you never can do anything else but tell the vendor that you have a need and ask them to change that, your orientation for service will always be about making a request to a vendor. So in order to change your orientation, if you can figure out a way to constructively solve a problem by actually understanding how a system works, you'll bring all of the things that people need to do, and you might be able to develop a system. And that's programmatically done, generally speaking. If you can't buy it or someone can't make it for you, you need to learn a language to either be able to work on a system, to customize it, which I think there's an entire layer of work that can be done just by customizing systems that allow you to access the code. And then there's building your own, which is, basically from scratch, which isn't what I do. I basically just hack into code, and I'm using PHP to do that. But PHP is one of those languages. There's also Python and Ruby. I think Python or Ruby, if I had to go back to the beginning of my life, I'd get a computer science degree, and I would have learned Python or Ruby. It seems very logical. The code is completely logical, and the expressions are something you could read and understand. But for me right now, I'm doing PHP, but I would say pick a language, because if you pick a language and you learn it well, the premise of those languages and the way they work, you can apply that to other languages. So I would say don't try to learn all of them. I would say pick one, but if you want to learn a programming language. But the different kinds of code, I mean, I don't know if that covers most of what you're
That's
saying.
good. We're feeling good about
Yeah.
that.
So I would say pick one, and maybe pick one that's useful to you. Pick one that could solve problems for you.
I I will add to that, because if you look at the job description outside, most of the web service librarian is part of the systems librarian. So you need to know more than just the web services part, the web language, PHP. You should also learn Java. You should also learn, I agree, Ruby and Python,
Right.
and also some Perl scripting languages. And you also need to learn the integrated development environments, which will be very helpful for a systems librarian.
But I think once you got the basic programming language down, like you said, you can really learn any kind of language out there. Try to pick one that has more logic. So if PHP is your first language, you're going to find you can apply it pretty much to anything else out there. Sorry.
In terms of this coding or other web services related experiences and skill sets you have, especially for those of you who are in MLS degree, how much of, in terms of the percentage, if you have to put any percentage, how much of your study within the MLS program contributed towards that skill set? Because I know or you come with
Well,
computer science.
I have to give at least 10%
background.
because I did take a Python class, which I found really
And
boring.
Lita has a
but
Python pre-conference this year.
Yeah.
So there's something to be learned from that.
most of the stuff that I think I've learned, I really learned on the job. Or like I learned myself by just teaching myself. Like I said, once you learn one language, you're going to find that it's so much easier to pick up another language. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was an English major. I know a lot of us librarians are like, yeah, but you know what? You understand syntax, and that's all this language is. If you just treat this as just another language, that's all you have to do. You're going to
Another
find,
logical system.
it's
And
totally
practice, I
laced.
mean, things like Code Academy is a free codeacademy.com. You can go and just basically break code all day long, and it tells you where you made a mistake, or it tells you how you were supposed to do it. And that's how you learn code. You just break stuff. And then the feedback, the negative feedback loop is how you learn. If everything goes smoothly, you're not learning at all. And so breaking things in.
SitePoint's another resource online. SitePoint for learning code.
Yeah.
And a lot of courses now,
The
even
WC3.
Stanford,
Yeah.
have you can just on your own just go through it, but it does take like just practice actually running code and sometimes.
But
just-
it's so much easier now for you guys to do this than us, because I have to say, we didn't have Amazon S3.
You just know
back
back
in
in
the
the
day.
errors now, and it's all there.
It's beautiful.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
There's
So-
also University College that teaches several languages. You could take advantage of that.
Yeah.
One of my staff teaches Java, and I know he's an excellent teacher.
Good plug.
There's also good resources, lynda.com with a Y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically has any language you want to learn. So I don't know, but I think answering this question is pretty easy, honestly. Like you need to know some HTML and CSS to get by in any sort of web services job in any industry or profession, and also ours. Particularly of use to know in our profession is data transmission stuff. So XML and all the different varieties, standard XML standards that exist. Because when you're dealing with any sort of systems integration thing over the web, it helps to know what RSS looks like, so you can know what you can pull out of an RSS feed and how you can process that on your own website. And the languages that you two were talking about, those are scripting languages, mainly server-side scripting languages. So this is the Python, Ruby, PHP. These are servers. These run on the web server itself. Now JavaScript is different because it's an application side, so a scripting language. So that's running on the client side. So that's actually running on your local machine, which if you
Like your browser or something.
yeah, like right in your browser is executing that code. So there's different types of languages that we're talking about. It's a pretty broad topic, but I agree. Like pick one scripting language and learn it, and the logical systems and the object-oriented programming concepts. Well, you can take those. You can keep those in your back pocket and take them wherever you need to, including to languages that you don't even exist yet. We'll work on those same logical systems.
But coming from since now that I know your library's like Microsoft, like, did you feel the need to learn ASP? I've always had to ask that because I'm totally a LAMP person.
I've had to
and, like,
debug ASP, and it's many an afternoon.
But you will learn something if you have to solve a problem. And that's usually how I I learn things is if I don't know what something is even, it's not working, let me take a look at it. And then you just, you do what you do. And over time, you do gain confidence. But it's not because, generally speaking, you remember everything from that Java book. It's because there have been situations that you did something that was strategic with code and it fixed something, or you were able to avoid something happening because you made, an attempt to put something together a certain way. And I think it's the trial and error, I think, for me anyway, on the job that allows code to equal work, instead of just learning how to code, which is, without an application, a real life application, learning code is like math, which is a beautiful thing, but you need the application.
I think Sheila, you might have touched on this, and this might be a question just for those of you in academic settings. Do any others of you do any work with institutional repositories? And maybe you could elaborate on your role and especially your relationship with faculty and how much autonomy you give them with that.
Well, that's great because we have two different systems, right? My university, University of Colorado Springs, is part of a shared consortium that uses DigiTool, which is a commercial product that we do not host ourselves. It's actually hosted by another campus for us. So my role in that is really to do the skin or the actual design, and that was essentially it. I had no other role with that project. Our archivist librarian is the one who takes care of working with the faculty. So I bet Sheila can answer that one better.
We, the University of Denver, we are part of the Alliances Digital Repository. And this is a system based on Fedora Common Architecture, digital asset management architecture, and with a Drupal front end. And it's a hybrid, so it could be managed by Islandora, a company. I am the digital infrastructure coordinator, so I have a big role with this. And I would facilitate the project that is coming to the library from the faculty, or I would advertise this service to the faculty. And then once I understand the requirement, I will work with the metadata librarian to negotiate what metadata need to be put in, what kind of metadata are necessary. And then I will also work with the alliances on the technical aspects.
Do you see that becoming a greater part of your job in the future?
Part of my job, not a greater job. There's other system, emerging system constantly. So I would say my the library's IT is not focusing just on the digital repository. Even an integrated library system is a big job as well. And perhaps I have different strategic views, and I'm thinking digital infrastructure only is part of the digital repository. It's only part of the whole infrastructure. How do I make a better user experience as an integrated system, front end and back end? So that's emerging.
If we had more time and resources, I would love special digital collections to come to life. Like that would be really interesting, but we never seem to really, without grant funding or something like that, like I think Denver Public Library and that Creating Communities project that they did was unbelievably, they put so much data in and there was such an experience that came out. And that to me is really special and local and has what, it's the people side of all of this code that matters to people. But it takes an enormous amount of effort and time and the metadata and organizing that. And you want all those real people to be able to put in and work with that stuff, because that's where you get those pearls and those unique perspectives, and you have to standardize it. But where those worlds meet, when it's done really well, I think those are some of the most valuable things code could do. But sometimes it falls into that category of, I don't know, a special project, I guess. But I would hope that people would still endeavor to get grants and do really interesting things.
In public libraries, it's especially.
Yeah, especially, yeah.
The academic libraries, it's
Kind of what we have
bread
to
and
do.
butter project.
Where our health sciences library uses the same digital system, and I'm on the digital services committee, and so we work with trying to promote the repository and getting people to participate in it. And then another aspect is in terms of search, being able to search the repository not only through the library's website, but even more importantly, outside of it. So making sure that the items are indexed and that they're searchable and findable. And so a lot of it is inviting, promoting, advertising, getting people to participate. Because if you don't have people to participate, then you don't have much of a repository. And then if you don't have people are able to find the items in the repository, then what's the point?
So along those lines, the next question on our list is if you could tell us briefly a little bit more about which systems you use, kind of maybe the name of the system and what it does, how it fits into the larger picture. That will, I think, help us get an overview. And maybe, Sheila, we could start with you this time.
Awesome.
We have many systems. For the website, we currently use Drupal system. However, the next action is to be migrated into the university's content management system. You will ask why. I did a due diligence and find out there's no, using university system, you could leverage their expertise, their consulting, their usability, their current templates. There's just no point that we need to set up another Drupal 7 version. So we're in the midst of redesigning the library's website and will be part of the university's content management system. So for our library integrated system, we use III innovative system. And for the digital repository, we are using the Alliance's digital repository system, which I just described. And digital asset management in-house, we use Rediscovery digital management asset system. There's all kinds of in-house built, customized applications as well to take care of statistics, to take care of record management, many other needs.
So we're currently using Drupal, and the larger university uses SharePoint, but we're the exception that we're using Drupal. For the digital repositories, we're using Digitool. We have a classes database. For example, our education reference department teaches several classes, and we're using a homegrown system for that. And one of our IT goals for 2013 is to either find a new system or build a new system. So that's a new vendor or open source, or fix the current one, or build a homegrown one, which takes a lot of time. So we're talking about different systems, and one of the next questions coming up is about changing technologies. I was thinking about how when you don't know what, being new in my position, how am I going to figure out what system to recommend to the IT department and to the library about what system to use for the classes database? And it's basically to ask. And I'm asking on the listservs, and I'm asking other librarians directly. And I think that just listening and learning that way is been very beneficial. And so looking at and doing a content analysis of other websites and other libraries, what systems they're using, and literally contacting those librarians directly has been a huge help. I asked UCSF, University of San Diego, MIT, and another university, I can't remember now. Anyway, they responded directly with like 2-page responses. And so I just wanted to recommend that you reach out that way.
Our district is actually just switching our whole website too. So like these two have been up to my ears in building that. The thing with a district is you're dealing with a lot of people that don't know a lot about technology. So teachers and things like that. So you kind of need more of a what you see is what you get kind of tool. So we were using this thing called School Center, which is all right. We're migrating to Microsoft SharePoint now for our intranet and internet. So everything is being migrated to that. One thing, like you were talking, I don't know when it came up before, but I think one thing that helps me in my job is thinking ahead and thinking to the next thing. So I was thinking about how I do our school website and our district website and how often people are actually on their computers now sitting and surfing the web. So I also built an iPhone app for our school and then our district. So that helps me, I don't know, just get information out there in kind of a different way. So I became an Apple developer and totally just, yeah, Googled that, and I had no idea how to do it, but got it working and everything. So that's something I do as well. It's pretty much just a glorified RSS reader, but just kind of gets information out to all of our parents and students and things like that. So that's something I think when I launched it, we were probably the first maybe 100 in the country, I think, to have an app for high school or a district. So I thought that was just something kind of interesting. But there's stuff out there, and to register for an Apple developer is like $100, I think, but to build it is free. So just kind of be looking for those free things and just kind of stay ahead of the game.
So we are a Drupal shop. We use Drupal 7. Our new site's going to be in Drupal 7. In terms of other, so that's a web content management system, which there are lots of web content management systems out there these days. WordPress, Joomla, Clone are the main open source ones, and then there's a whole horde of paper ones, including Expression Engine, which a lot of libraries use, and SitePoint, not SitePoint, Sitecore rather. There's a lot, but probably I think it's safe to say that WordPress and Drupal pretty much dominate libraries. Both all three types of libraries: academic, public, and special libraries. A lot of people using Drupal or running old static sites. So I guess, I mean, we use so many systems. In public libraries, you're dealing with an events calendar system often. We also run summer reading programs every summer. It's probably the biggest programming that we do is around summer reading programs. So you'll often have a system that will allow patrons to sign up and participate in a program, and usually like get rewards and prizes, and has a whole back-end management for your librarians. eVanced makes it probably the most popular one out there, which is the one we use. I'm not advocating for this product. I will advocate for Drupal 7, however.
You have to get paid for this, right?
Alternative, though. I mean, it's.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to mention that we've recently gotten into is, and this is kind of a technical thing, but it's we've recently started using Git versioning software, which is exactly what it is. So this is, for instance, the Linux kernel is in Git. Drupal itself, the Drupal project, is in Git. So this is a software development tool that allows a lot of people, like the number of people that contribute to the Linux project, for instance, is in the hundreds. The number of people contributing to the Drupal project is in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. So highly collaborative software development platform called Git. And
GitHub,
Yes,
yes, GitHub
where
is
you
a
can, yeah,
repository. What would you call that? Host.
Yeah.
But
out
Git
there.
is the underlying software. It's command line. It can be scary for some people. It was certainly scary for us. But it's also it provides you with
If you're
some
scared, that's
serious.
good. That's the motivation, right?
security.
The fear is how you motivate yourself. You just you gotta go for it.
But you can also roll back a bad change with one command, and it's gone, like it never existed. So it's pretty useful stuff.
Yeah, you can see everything you've been doing, if you're developing with someone, it's invaluable, I think, because it allows you to develop on an environment and then kind of switch back and forth and see where you're at. It lets you know that you can't move forward until you do something that your partner you have to get that. And so that's awesome.
Yeah, it keeps you in check.
Even though we're pretty close, I mean, we're right next to each other, but you know, when you're doing stuff, you're like, is that okay? It's like, oh, you did a whole bunch of stuff in between that. So.
Then there's ILSs and discovery layers in particular is what web services librarians are concerned with, is the discovery layer. And we use Innovative as well, III. And we use the Encore discovery layer. Not advocating for not working for Innovative, but that's what we use. there's pros and cons to all these systems really, and it's very rare that you find someone that really says, man, my ILS is awesome. I love it. I just want to.
It's like I built it
beware
myself.
of the hard sell too, with like a lot of vendors and things like that. If you learn enough about code and about coding, or like just the sort of the technical languages, you're able to sort of detect a hard sell. So if someone's telling you about a product and it's the answer to all of your problems, if you ask them how it works, or if you are able to ask those sort of informed or intelligent questions, you have a better chance of not just getting the hard sell for something that might be a trapdoor for your staff later to maintain, or something that you can't support, that won't be sustainable. And so I would say even just increasing your awareness of all of these things gets you to maybe a better decision-making sort of perspective. And for open source, I mean, we're plugging open source a little bit, but the sharing of that code and being able to use strategies across code is huge, because when something's proprietary, you have to request someone to do something about that from that vendor. And I think that's what I love about open source stuff, is that even though you don't know what you're doing.
Sorry, follow-up question. Any favorite integrated development environment?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Favorite integrated development environment.
IDEs like Eclipse or what do you use?
Integrated development.
And could you briefly define integrated development environment?
Well, my development environment, I mean, I'm just using like a LAMP stack on locals and then on servers. So basically for me, I like to have lots of sandboxes. Just like when you said like getting a sandbox and being able to get servers across IT departments, that's huge. And being able to have lots of sandboxes, whatever the infrastructure is, I can have something on my Mac, and I can do Drupal on my Mac. That's a whole separate, just where I can play. And everything I do at work, there's defined things, but I can always just, you could do it today. You could go and get a Drupal installation and have a web server on your computer tonight if you went to lynda.com or build a module, and all of that's open code. That's not the same thing. SharePoint is not like that, and learning happens, you can get someone to come out and train you, but learning happens when something's not working, or your communications department has a system they use for email, or your IT department has a SysAid ticketing system that you have to figure out how all these things balance across your workflow. And I think open source allows you to think a little bit ahead, just like you were saying about things that you might be able to solve your own problems before they become problems. So I'm an open source server, but you said everything we had.
And when it comes to systems, I have to say everyone's pretty much said all the systems, right? So yeah, pretty much. I'm like, oh, I don't know what to add, but you're going to be dealing with vendor systems, like regardless. So whether if it's your ILS or if it's your link resolver or something else, even LibGuides, which is very popular in academic libraries, you're going to have to know how to deal with these vendors when the machines aren't doing what they should be doing.
A personal question, or question by me. I'm curious about wireframing and user-oriented design. How do you guys approach usability when you guys are actually setting up these sites? I know it's a really broad question, but
Every day, usability.
It starts with research. You have to come up with a good research scheme to see what your users want from your web presence and what they do on the current web presence. And that goes across all different types of libraries, all institutions, everyone. You should be, using several different surveying methods, observation methods, and kind of triangulating, between methods what your top user tasks are, and then you want to those are the most important things on your website. And sometimes they're not. Like our top user tasks are, predictably searching the library catalog and using my account functions. So those aren't even the website. But we have to get people to, the OPAC, the discovery layer, the ILS, whatever section you want to call it.
But it's an easy choice for mobile when you do the one pager and it's the catalog, my account, locations and hours. Your app is easier to make when you know the top 3 tasks that your people, just like the app you made was the useful thing someone needed for whatever they were doing. So I think there's usability is top tasks, but then it's like there's an excellence level that you're not meeting at all times, like in the experience into and back out of, wherever someone's trying to go and get something, and how do they get to it and then get back to whatever their next step is. And there's a lot that goes into that. that. There's expense, like Moray is software that does a lot of observational, plus it gives you lots of data. We don't have that. I think there's a price point with that. But there's lots of software that does all of that too.
So you guys do a lot of the usability testing in-house, there's no outsourcing. Have you ever dealt with any usability companies?
Can libraries afford them?
Before Chris, we had a redesign that did focus groups, but I think the world has kind of come around to, you get 5 people in a user group and you're going to get what people say and not what people do. So you have to be really careful about surveys and things like these metrics that allow people to describe what they're doing, because there's a big disconnect between what people actually do and what they say. And so observations are really important, but I think knowing your user is critical. And it's a sort of an intimate thing from the first time, the first embrace, whenever they're trying to do something, if it's online, and sometimes it's not online. And sometimes there's a balance to strike between trying to solve all their problems online, when some of those problems could be solved in different ways.
And then some of the things that I've done, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure I don't cut anyone off. Is when we talk about finding out what the top tasks are, on your website, it's not always easy to discern, but there's several ways you can go about figuring out. And one of the ways that my research is focused on web analytics, and that's really about website usage data. How we can tell what people are actually doing on our website versus relying on people telling us what they do, which is often inaccurate because they like to tell us that they're awesome, but they really get confused. And that's what we need to know.
We're good.
Yeah, or they tell us, no, the site's great. And they didn't really mean that either. But so what I've actually gone through my site, and I've actually developed a web analytics strategy to figure out what people are doing on my site, what kind of goals do I have for my audience to do, and to work that way. So I'm actually a very data-driven librarian there. And then I go about and do more the guerrilla usability testing, where I just randomly pull people aside and start capturing them and asking them, can we try this for me real fast? Can you see if you can find this? So a lot of it's that way.
A/B testing.
A/B testing is great. Actually, there's a new feature in Google Analytics that lets you do A/B testing on the fly.
Google Analytics is the go-to.
One thing you have to consider for academic libraries, though, is that you might have to deal with your IRB, your Institutional Review Board, for some of this data, too. So it's not always so easy as some of the public libraries have it, where they can actually just go and actually put a survey on the website and get data back. We actually have to go through an IRB process in order to do that in my library. So that's something you might want to consider before just randomly talking to your users. Creepy, right?
Well, something that we're investigating is we're going to do a large usability study, and we're planning to do remote online usability testing using Loop 11, LOOP 11. And we spoke with Drexel University Library, and they're using it. Rebecca Kelzer over there started using it, and we're very happy with it. It's about $1,900 a year that's for the nonprofit rate, and that's for unlimited testing. You can send out, you can develop your questions, like the scenario you want them to do, and have the send out the URL to your users or via pop-up on your website or your listserv or what have you, and then it will has built-in analytics to bring all that in. It will do heat mapping via clicks, and for $1,900 a year. And for example, with Rebecca Drexel, their first usability study, they got 400 responses in 2 days. So we can get some serious aggregate data, not just like 5 or 10 people in a traditional usability testing. So that's something we're planning on doing later.
I think what they've been describing is a user-centric design. And I'm combining usability and the design systems design lifecycle. So you're combining this iterative design and user-centric design. And I also heard that 5 people testing. There's a Microsoft Desirability Toolkit. You could look it up, and they describe how you use 5 people review. And there's also expert review. If you have academic, we have more of librarians as experts, so we will do expert review when we do this iterative design process.
One question for you. In terms of the systems design life cycle, it is probably, it is very costly. From the requirement analysis, again, going back to the users, and, iteratively And today, I think people are talking about this lean,
Agile development. Mhm.
rapid deployment. How do you reconcile?
Mhm. We just, when I started working at the IT department, I was given a task. We have to replace this metadata management system that someone else had built, and it's a metadata management system. Okay, and looking at comparing the open source software and deciding if we could use open source software, we found out it needs so much customization, it doesn't make sense to use the open source software. So we have to redesign this. And do we take this life cycle seriously, or we do an agile development? So we decided to do a life cycle, but we developed this in different modules with the reusability in our head. So each module can be reused in different projects. So it takes a little bit more time, but we designed it in a different module. So I'm combining the system requirement with the sort of a long-term goal in my mind. And it's been paying off. I could see that we can use this module for data management system. And currently it's called metadata management system. And it will open up for the art history department to use with an LDAP authentication in front. So anybody with A727 number can test that for us. If you are interested, let me know. Under Dublin Core XML.
You've all kind of touched on this, but for those of you who are doing your own personal research, what are some of the hot topics or your own research interests that you'd be willing to share?
Anybody? Well, I have to say, I'm pretty into web analytics right now. I'm going to be presenting a paper at ACRL in Indianapolis, and it's going to be on using usability metrics and combining usability metrics and web analytics metrics. And actually, I'm turning in my dossier in fall. So my whole research agenda is built around open source systems and web analytics. So those are my two areas of research. I know.
I'm really into web content strategy and how content management systems and public libraries can really evolve the work of public librarians on the web, using the medium of the web, and how web content management systems, if you build practices around them and you tie your workflow to your information architecture. So there's no content type that goes unsupported, is the idea there, and you get commitments from staff to do the real work, which is content production, web content production in libraries. There's a tremendous ROI on this type of stuff. The example that I always use is that if a patron approaches a service desk and wants to know that librarian's 5 favorite mystery books, that's great, and that transaction has value, right? Tremendous value, and that's what we do, right? But if that same librarian writes a blog post about their 5 favorite mystery books in 2012, thousands of people are going to read that. So that's library service too. So the whole idea of library service equals web content, and web content production is kind of a particular area of interest for me.
And I love the philosophy behind it. And so that's my hot topic, is that writing, it didn't go away and it's coming back. Like, the ability to write well is huge. Code well is good too, but writing is a huge part. And I think everything that Chris said, to me, it's about lowering barriers. So if there's sort of a philosophical or a sociological mechanism, it's that it lowers barriers for staff and for patrons to, I guess, things that help people learn, grow, fascinate people, make people mad. All of this sort of content management isn't about the content or the management of it per se. It's about the experiences people are having, and it's to get your job done. It's to get your kids to school on time. Whatever the thing is, people are creating apps and softwares, developing things, but it's about life. It's about the things we care about. And I think if code can take away barriers for us to get connected to one another, get closer to, I don't know, sort of that community vibe, which I think libraries is what I care about. So if you can combine that with the work that you do and evidence-based decision-making, which is Tabitha knows this analytics part, all of these tools that we use are so we can tell the stories and make decisions that really have impact. And so that's sort of, I feel like the cutting edge is bringing all of that together into sort of making things happen that are really powerful and useful instead of creating systems that divide or separate and keep people from collaborating, because that just, we don't learn and we don't grow together, and then we're just constantly trying to fix things.
To piggyback on that, I just finished my principal's license, and I think a lot of principals come from like traditional classroom teachers, and that whole idea of me being, I kind of call myself the hub of the school, which might be a little pretentious, but whatever. But knowing kind of what's going on in the whole building and how things can be cross-curricular and working together, I think is really powerful. So I'm really into kind of leadership right now and seeing how those bonds can be formed. And I don't know if there are a lot of librarians who become principals, so really advocating for libraries, school libraries, and showing how important they can be just to the whole, providing services to the whole school. So.
A big research interest of mine is information architecture. And I was fortunate enough when I was very active in DU ACES to go to the IA summit that was held here in Denver a couple years ago. And so I'm going to go again next week. So I'm really excited about that. And get to room with Misty Weaver, who's an IA guru. So really excited. Anyway, one of the things that for our goal is to have content-driven IA and really focusing on the user experience, just like echoing what you were saying, and about the Google Analytics, and just integrating all of that and making sure that just realizing just the past couple of months that so much of work is really listening to what the needs are of the staff, of the different departments, and of the users. And when you listen and you put that in a context so that you can understand, okay, so EdRef really wants this, and Access Services wants this, and they actually have the same goals, but they think they have different ways of getting there. But actually, we can use the same method to get to this, to reach the same goal. And so a lot of it is listening.
My research interest in PhD studies on data governance. I have many interests, but because of the time limit, so I can only concentrate on getting my dissertation out first. So I'll just put that out. I think what I would, if I have more spare time, I would like to be to learn more of a public speaking. That's I feel that is the weakness. Maybe other librarians in the library school, you could use your chance to learn public speaking because it holds well in a job interview, in a meeting, or even to make a case on your job.
You should join Toastmasters.
So this goes pretty well into one of the other questions on our list. How do you stay current with changing technologies? If you want to talk about blogs or publications or conferences. Blogs.
Yeah, this was fun.
How do you say it? I don't know. Email is my enemy. It's my friend. I have a Twitter account, and I've sort of strategically created a flow of information into me. It's haphazard. There's a million things every day that's interesting in the world, and I feel like staying in touch with Drupal, which is the project that I'm working on, the specific thing that if I get better at my Drupal skills, that can impact my project, our goals, the larger goals of what I care about, the vision of where I work, and then maybe loop back to me in the satisfaction of maybe I could be part of something much larger than myself and make that better, and then give my code back. If I could ever get to a point where I was good enough with skills to give that back to GitHub and I'm contributing to that, that would be a great full circle for me. And keeping like up to date, Alistapart is a site that I stay in touch with. The Confab, all the content strategy, Halverson, there's Kathy Halverson, Karen McGrain, these are names, but their Twitter accounts, they talk about the work that they do. Luke Wilson talks about code, smashing.com puts out enormous amount of data about how to code, how to do things well, how to not, get off track by, following the latest thing. But for me, it's kind of a haphazard thing where my colleagues send me stuff a lot, and I have that as a network. But other than that, it's pretty much a harvesting approach for me on any given day. I go out and feed and mine, and then but it's worked for me because I think the smartest people and the most intelligent people are creating media, and that's because of the world that we live in now, and that's it's a grace that we have now that we didn't have 10 years ago, that you can actually find that leading edge, and then people are discovering what works and what doesn't work, and I just read about that stuff, so I do a lot of reading.
Yeah, to add to that, I have to say, if you just look around the room, right here's a network. Like, don't be afraid of asking questions. You would not believe it, but we're all librarians, and like we want to help. Crazy, isn't it? It's almost like we chose this profession on purpose. But another thing to do is, if there's a chance, go to a conference, build that network out. Don't just rely on. I mean, you can rely with an in-state, go national. Find your group of peeps, and you're going to find that your peeps are going to introduce you to other people, and then that way you can actually put your questions out to the listserv. And not just put questions out, but feel free to answer them too. If you have an answer, feel free to share, because my favorite motto is sharing is caring. So I find that, and you can live by that. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
If I got a content strategy question, I'm going, it's okay. He knows I will.
Well, I'm still insecure about that sort of, well, what do I know? And but working with Chris, he uses that as an agency to better himself and to help other people become better. And that feedback loop, I think it's inspiring. It's inspiring in both ways, that it does build on its own mechanism. But I would say if there's a conference you want to go to and it doesn't seem to relate to something, just go. And I know their budgets and the money thing is really tight, but in my life, I have found when I make a decision to do something just because I want to do it, there's usually a pearl or something happens with that event. And even if it's just my intentions, that something will happen, that I learn something or I grow in a way that is beneficial. So pursue things even if your workplace doesn't have exactly what it is.
Well, even that, like DrupalCon, there's DrupalCons all over the place. You trip over them.
I know, right? They're like puppies and kitties. They're everywhere.
You also, I think librarians are getting better at this, but traditionally we are kind of an insular group. We tend to be inward focused on our own profession and our own practices that have come out of, doing this for hundreds of years. Organizing information and knowledge for hundreds of years. So, and this, I'm not the first person to say this, obviously, but like breaking out of that bubble, monitoring media channels that are not library-centric media channels, because especially when you're in public libraries, your users are especially on the web, they don't exist in that library-centric world. They don't know what a database is, and they don't care. And they shouldn't have to care. So monitoring channels outside of library land is pretty important, and to kind of stay grounded in not just what's going on in library technology, but just what's going on in technology and social science. Right?
I talk to my kids all the time about what a good source is and what isn't. And I think it's funny that I still get School Library Journal every month, but what was on Twitter 2 months ago just came out in the latest, School Library Journal. So I think I might ditch that, which I don't know if that's really bad to say, but it's just, you're getting 2-month-old information. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, that's totally, while I'm walking through the hallways or anything like that, I'm constantly on my Twitter feed. The other way I stay current is by problems that people present me with. So a lot of times teachers or parents or students will come to me with something that they want to do or like integrate into their classroom. And I say, I bet there's a way to figure it out, and we kind of make it happen. So just kind of problem solving helps me stay current as well. And they always say, how do you do all this stuff? I'm like, it's my job. It's awesome. Yeah.
So encourage you to use your network. Like, for example, Alex Martinez is an adjunct professor here, and he teaches our information architecture class, and he works at the Office of Teaching and Learning at the library. And we stay in touch. We work on projects together. And he recently recommended Mockups, MOQUPS. HTML5 based wireframing online, way easier than Azure, and not clunky. It's just fantastic. So definitely using your network and using LinkedIn is a great way to find out about what's going on too. And I would echo what Chris said about going outside of your network, going to classes and events that are outside of the library. Take business courses, or go like museum websites, or I mean that's very close to library, but just outside and going like I know DU has a TEDx DU events, going to that. And the business school here has phenomenal speakers, like as in CEO of Southwest and Whole Foods. So going to those kinds of events and finding out what's happening outside of the library.
For me, I think people think that I'm a dinosaur because I don't tweet.
Well, I don't tweet. I just read other people's.
Yeah.
I don't have
think
tweets,
so.
but it's usually like
Yeah.
forwarding other
Lurker.
people. I mean, yeah, I'm
Exactly.
terrible for voracious.
Yeah. I personally really, I don't keep abreast of popular tech press, but I do read a lot of research literature, which is the footing and the foundation for the emerging systems. And to get the technologies, to keep current of the technologies, I use this approach since I manage projects. So I would give my staff, my developer project, and I would expect I will apply this called the complete doctrine of staff work, a business concept, management concept. So they will come to me with what they have learned as a technology and present a complete work for me to say yes or no. But from there, I will be able to do research and say yes and no. So that's my approach.
So I think we have time for one more question. I'm going to kind of combine 3 in 1. Get the last pearls of wisdom out here. Okay, so we had a question on what type of classes do you recommend taking for LAS students, what you wish you had done in school to prepare for applying for jobs, and what advice you have for new professionals going into web services. So feel free to answer any or all of those. And anybody who wants to go first.
Wow. Okay, I'll go first. I think I've said some of them already. I would encourage you all to take, if you want to go through this track of systems librarians or web services librarian, take some programming classes, business communication, so you will know how to understand your user and how to understand or set up a process to use your users' feedback into a service development routine or development. And I will encourage you to take some research methodology classes. And again, I regret that I didn't take any public speaking classes. So I will encourage you if you could do that. Be a web service librarian, you should really be proficient with the core and foundational type of skills and to become a web services librarian.
And I would add to that you take the project management classes, and you can get certified with PMI, project management certification, that you take as many opportunities as you can to volunteer and do internships and have a 20-minute coffee meetup with librarians or library directors or different people. Tell them, you're a student, you'd really like their advice on something, or just ask them about something, and ask them if you can take them out for coffee, meet with them for 20 minutes. I met with the LinkedIn, the career advisor professional here on campus. Carly Einstein, yeah, and that's one of the things that she has highly recommended is developing those relationships early on as a student, because they'll definitely carry over when you're starting to look at job descriptions and apply for jobs and go on job interviews. And there's a book called How to Stay Afloat in the Academic Library Job Pool by Teresa Neely, Neely. So I highly recommend that also.
Number one thing I wish I had done is not spend $200 on a suit because I got my job on a phone interview. Now it's just sitting in my closet and I can never wear. I think my biggest advice would be go out and get as much experience as you can. I'm just a more hands-on type of person, and I can sit in class all day and I won't take in as much. So my internships were the most valuable things that I did in schools. Just doing that, even spending more time than I was supposed to. I got paired up with an awesome mentor, and I talk to her daily about things still. So that was huge. And yeah, getting into schools and things like that, but you guys wouldn't need to do that. Another thing is I was really impressed just getting emails from Lindsay about her like solid web presence. And I did totally a little stalking about, I don't know, just kind of what she has going on and things like that. But really making yourself stand out. Because I know myself, I had no experience. I was pretty young. And just how am I going to outshine everyone else that is applying for this job? So really put some time into that. I did a whole, web thing. And then when I got an interview, I would FedEx it like a packet, like, just with all my stuff in there, just to kind of say, I might want to give this person a second look kind of thing. And then you have all your web stuff to back you up. So just, really, how can I outshine everyone else and be way cooler than them?
So, like the webmasters of old, the web services librarian role is kind of a kaleidoscope of different skills, and they range from project management, like we talked about, the communication stuff, to all the way down to ones and zeros of coding. And so, and I find there's a trend in a lot of larger libraries in particular that people are finally starting to realize that not one person can't do all this stuff well because it's too specialized. So, and certainly the corporate world, particularly in the .com boom, you see these jobs popping up like taxonomists, and analytics specialists, usability specialists. Thank you. Just developers, right? Application layer developers, server developers,
And your information architecturalists.
Yes, exactly. IA developer, IA people. So
Designers.
realize that, while many libraries, there's a trend right now in libraries, especially larger libraries, where we're finally getting to a place where we can say, okay, we need specialists here to do just pieces of this. We need just the project manager. We need just the systems developer. We need just the content coordinator type position and to coordinate content developers, right? So if you have a particular acumen in any of these particular areas, I would say specialize in that. While keeping tabs on the rest, of course, but especially don't hesitate to specialize. And then the other advice is if you see someone doing a job that you find interesting, approach them and talk to them, and befriend them and see what their work is like on a day-to-day basis. I mean, librarians like to share. We're by the nature of our profession, we're sharing folks. So and we're pretty open to help people along in their career path. So yeah, talk to people that are doing the work that you want to do. Email them.
One of my pieces of advice, and this is something I took seriously when I was a graduate student, and that is start looking at those job descriptions now. Don't wait until May when you're not ready to graduate. Start looking now. Figure out what skills are desirable out there and make sure you can specialize in those skills. Even if you don't have an assistantship or don't have an opportunity to do an internship, see if you can still build web projects out there for any reason. Because again, it puts your name out there and it gives you the experience that you need. Now for my piece of advice, it's more of don't panic. You'll be okay. You would not believe it, but I've been out of the field for 6 years now. So it's just, I've actually been on the opposite side more recently. I've been on the job search committees. And really what we're looking for are people who are confident in their skill set, and they don't have to be the Renaissance librarian. They don't have to know everything. But what we do ask in the job description is that you specialize in this and make sure you can prove that. Do that, and you're going to make it to the face-to-face interview.
Yeah, I would really say that every job you apply for, treat it as an individual experience. Don't send the same resume. I mean, I feel like for me, when you know what someone needs, it's the same thing as like a reference interview. That person, that unique person comes up and you have to determine exactly what they need. And I think that's something that, I don't know, I think that's something that I would do if I were having personal relationships with people. And that would be the other side of my advice as far as like sort of customizing all of your experiences with any interview process, finding out about the place, the people that work there, finding out if you know anyone that knows someone there, if you can make connections. But the other side is that personal side, which is be smart as you can possibly be about everything, and be kind to everyone you meet. And so that's the other part
Yes.
of it. And he knows
Yeah.
this about me.
Correct.
It's like you don't know the people that you meet every day could be someone that makes a difference in your career, in someone else's career or life. So be smart.
And not just the people. Look at their websites too. And even if you think it's atrocious, try to
Yeah.
find one thing you like about it.
Okay, well, a huge thank you for all of our panelists.